It's always good to talk to our next guest. Now, you may know Rob Maadi from a million different places. So he's known for his time as a reality TV star, as a writer for the Associated Press, where he covers the Eagles, the NFL, and the Philadelphia Phillies. And of late, he's been hosting a show which you can catch online, faithonthefieldshow.com, and it's called Faith on the Field. And we welcome Rob to the station now. How are you, Rob?
Hey, I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Hey, wonderful. We're really happy to have you join us today. So I'd love to talk a little bit Eagles and get to your book, which is fresh out, hot on the press. And but let's first talk about this Philadelphia Eagles team. So you're covering a lot of Eagles right now this time of year. So what overarching storyline would you say is the big storyline you've been following this season so far?
I think the number one thing surrounding the Eagles has been the same since the end of last season, OTAs, everything, is when is Carson Wentz going to come back? Is he going to be ready for week one? That's his stated goal. That's his intention. I've said numerous times on shows that I host that I don't think he's going to be medically cleared and ready to go in time for the first game, for the season opener, and I'm fine with that. I get a lot of resistance from people out there when I say this, who think I'm being too cautious, too conservative. But that's how I look at it. When you have the Super Bowl MVP as your backup quarterback, that's why he's here. I absolutely would not want to rush the franchise quarterback back into action 9 months after his injury. Even today, they get Christian Hackenberg's in there as a fifth quarterback, and he's a story because he's a quarterback and he's a name, and he's a guy who was drafted up high a couple of years ago. Quarterbacks always steal the spotlight no matter what, guys.
So what do you think the plan is right now, given the uncertainty about him starting the season, with Nick Foles really not getting some game action so far? What do you think the Eagles are doing then at the position right now, and what their plan might be going forward?
I think this is a good scenario in that we know what Nick Foles can do, and we know Nick Foles didn't even play in a preseason last year, and we saw what he could do. He won the franchise's first ever Super Bowl, so they're okay. He's back to practice after taking a few days off because of the spasms in his neck and shoulder and area. He's back at practice. Saw him doing a lot of things today. Saw Carson Wentz, even though he wasn't in 11-on-11, doing a lot of good things, showing some mobility. They're getting an opportunity now, guys, to develop Nate Sudfeld and see if he can be a backup next year when Nick Foles is more than likely not going to be here. So this is a good opportunity for them over the course of the next 3 games to see if Nate Sudfeld could be that guy, if he's got potential to be a backup, not a number 3. And now that they've brought in Christian Hackenberg, I didn't think Joe Callahan was going to be a guy who sticks around long enough to make the roster or even come back if there was an injury. But Hackenberg's a guy who's had a lot of success in the past in college, not in the NFL, of course, never played it down in the NFL yet. But he's a guy that they could work on, try and develop, and see if he could be someone they can potentially have as a 3 going forward down the road. So that's what their plan is. I don't think Nick Foles is going to play much, if at all, in the preseason. Maybe he gets a couple series, but being that teams are very cautious about guys getting injured and seeing what happened last weekend, you already see guys going down for the season. They're going to take a very conservative approach, especially with their quarterbacks.
Rob Maadi of the Associated Press joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. Rob, there's a new offensive coordinator in town, Mike Groh, and I feel like that story is not talked about as much as it should be. That's a big deal, especially with the defending Super Bowl champs. Give our listeners a little bit of your insight on the Eagles dealing with a whole new offensive coordinator, Doug Peterson's right-hand man, off to Indianapolis. What are your thoughts on how the Eagles will kind of bounce back after getting a new OC in town?
Yeah, a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterbacks coach, and I do think those are a little bit underplayed sometimes because they had a lot of familiarity with Frank Reich and DiFilippo, and those were guys they were comfortable with, and they were guys that they had success with, obviously. The good thing is that they didn't go out and bring in guys who were not here already and weren't already familiar with the system. These are guys, Mike Groh and Press Taylor, were already here. They are familiar with everything. They know the guys. They have good rapport with all of the players and the guys that they're leading. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. Frank Reich, of course, was an excellent offensive coordinator, and it shows in that he got a head coaching position. But Mike Groh is somebody that Peterson has a lot of confidence in. So I don't think there's going to be a drop-off or any kind of time period where you're going to have to be adjust to someone coming in with new ideas, new philosophies, new system, or anything like that.
So staying on the offensive side of the ball, the Eagles have 3 running backs that are going to be vying for carries, which is, I don't even want to call it a problem, but I'll say it's a good problem to have. Give us your thoughts on how they're going to divvy up the carries now with Ajayi, Sproles, Corey Clement, and there's even some other guys there in the bottom half of the depth chart that are trying to push for the team and possibly even see the field a little bit.
Yeah, that's probably the most interesting battle in training camp is who's going to be the 4th running back, and if they even carry a 5th guy between Smallwood, Pumphrey, and Josh Adams, who may have taken a leg up in a race. But then I heard Mike Groh saying good things today about Smallwood. Jay Ajayi is going to be the guy they count on the most, especially if they don't have any intent of bringing him back after this season. It could be like a couple of years ago where you saw the Cowboys wear out DeMarco Murray going into his free agent season, and they were like, okay, they got as much as they could out of him, and he was gone somewhere else. If the Eagles don't have any intention of bringing Jay Ajayi back, well, they can carry him like a workhorse this year and just rest him up in spurts in different spots when they think it's best. But you got a nice change of pace guy in Darren Sproles who adds a different dimension to the offense. We saw Corey Clement last year come on as an undrafted rookie and have tremendous success, and especially in the Super Bowl catching the ball too as well. So I think they're in a really good situation. They have a lot of depth there. It'll be interesting to see how Doug Peterson really goes to his different guys. He's got so many different weapons now. One thing to be concerned about, though, is Alshon Jeffrey and his health. There was a report today that said he may start the season on the PUP list. If that is the case, and I haven't heard that that's going to happen yet, and I don't think they know if that's going to happen yet, but if that is the case, they might be a little down there at wide receiver, and that could be something that hinders them early on.
Yeah, just going right off of you bringing up Jeffrey on the PUP list, that was going to be my next question to you. Who's going to step up if he actually does start the season out on the PUP list? For the listeners out there, that's 6 games that no Alshon Jeffrey on the field. So obviously you have Mike Wallace, new addition, Nelson Aguilar, not new addition. He'll be back. He's going to play a huge role this year. And then you got Mac Hollins, Greg Ward, Aiken, new addition. How does that 3rd and 4th receiver position play out, especially if Jeffrey is missing the first 6 games?
It's an opportunity for Mac Hollins, who showed that he's a good blocking wide receiver. Now he's got to step up and be a guy who can run the routes, be precise, make the catches. It's an opportunity for Mac Hollins to step up. Shelton Gibson's another guy they were high on last year when they drafted him. He didn't see the field much, if at all, last year. And then we see him in one of the highlights of the first game of the preseason is Shelton Gibson showing off that speed, going deep, making that touchdown catch. Shelton Gibson's going to be a guy that they'll also look at to give him some opportunities if Jeffrey can't go. The good thing is they've added a weapon in Dallas Goedert, and we saw a little bit of that in preseason in the first game. And he's a guy with the different formations, different sets that they go to. They can go with a lot of 2 tight end. They can go with 2 split out a wide receiver. Darren Sproles, Corey Clement can be used in that role. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a wide receiver making up for those catches or being the weapon that they go to.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, switching to the other side of the ball, Rob, Fletcher Cox has been on record saying, listen, I'm your defensive player of the year this year. I want to be defensive player of the year. And that's really the only next step in my mind that this guy can take. He's an absolute stud. What are you seeing and hearing from the Fletcher Cox camp, and what do you predict that we're going to see from him this season?
It's interesting. I talked to him today a little bit about that and some of the other things that he does. He did some radio last year, and he told me he wasn't going to be doing that this year. It's just more time for him to focus on his craft. He's a guy who, if he wants to devote himself 100% to football, he can dominate on any given day. It's not that he doesn't, but he's a guy who'll tell you he's outside of the NFL or playing in the NFL. We heard him say last year during Super Bowl week that he's never watched a Super Bowl, which is kind of unfathomable for an NFL player to have grown up and never watched a Super Bowl game. He doesn't really love football. to watch it, but only to play it. So if he's got that determination and that desire to go all out and accomplish this kind of individual personal accolade, I think this is something that he could do. There's a lot of stiff competition out there, but he's got that kind of talent. He's a game wrecker. He's a game changer, and it will be really interesting to see if he could step up and really take over. But there's a lot of teams double team him, triple team him, and that frees up opportunities for other guys on a defensive line. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, and sometimes it ends up being like the contest comes down to numbers, and people don't really see inside those numbers if he doesn't have double-digit monster sack totals when it comes down to something like Player of the Year. But he could take over a game in so many different ways, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he could do.
Now, Rob, I want to ask you about a piece you wrote on Friday that was a little controversial. Now, this isn't a column. It isn't an opinion piece, but you basically wrote about what the NFL players were trying to emphasize through what has often been labeled a protest. And I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the message that the NFL players are looking to send and how that message might be getting lost.
Yeah, like you said, it wasn't a column. It wasn't an opinion piece. It was a story from because of Thursday night, what happened in that a lot of players went back to doing the demonstration during the national anthem. And what gets lost in a lot of this is the message that they're trying to send. So what we did on Friday, I was asked to do a national story looking at what the players are real. And it's been done before. I've done it before, but it was once again time to reiterate because it just happened Thursday night. What are these guys standing for? And it's social inequality, racial inequality, social injustice. And those are really the things that these guys want to see changed. I was talking to Malcolm Jenkins today because he's really concerned about prison reform. I'm a guy who has been in prisons. So I'm not coming at you from a perspective of someone who's sitting back on his couch who doesn't have any kind of interest or been inside or knows anything about what's going on. I was on a prison mission trip just 2 weeks ago in Kentucky. 5 days. We went saw about 11 different prison populations, played 20 softball games, and to hear guys tell me that I'd rather not get out of prison because I have it's better for me in here, or some guys will say, I get out, there's nothing for me out there, there's no family, there's no work, I don't have an ID, I don't have anything, so I commit an armed robbery so I can come back in here and be taken care of. These are the things that Malcolm Jenkins is trying to stand up and fight for because he sees that, he understands that, and those are the T-shirts that they were wearing that day. And what was pretty disappointing is the reaction to the story. People weren't necessarily coming at me, but they were going at it. And I look at my mentions on Twitter and just to read some of the things. I got a personal email from someone I'd never met, and I posted it yesterday on Twitter last night after 2 days thinking about it. And I was like, wow, this is what some people out there are thinking in response to what these guys are doing. And I think it shows a major divide in this country, and it's unfortunate because it's just sad. I go by the love your neighbor as yourself principle. That's what guides me in life. And to see how people react and respond to this, and they don't want to be understanding, and they don't want to see where the other side is coming from, it is a really sad state of affairs right now in this country.
Now, is it really a matter of the other side? I mean, because I think most people are innately good and they want to help people. Why is it that this message is getting so skewed, do you think?
I think it starts with people who want to misinterpret the message and people who want to make it out to be a stance against the nation, a stance against the military, against police, against the flag, or against the song itself. And what Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed and everyone else who's followed in their example will tell you is they are not anti-America. They are not anti the flag, but that's the narrative that some people choose to put out there and others go by, and then they blind themselves or they close their eyes to what really are the issues. And we live in a world where people who are insulated or don't have to face those problems or don't have to worry about leaving their home and being subjected to anything, any kind of biases or prejudice or anything like that. If it doesn't affect them, they're not concerned about it. And I think we all should look at issues that even if it doesn't affect me personally, but if it affects my brother, if it affects my sister, and when I say brother and sister, I mean anyone out there, no matter their race, color, creed, religion, whatever it is, then it should internally affect me as well. And I don't know. People may be inherently good. As you said, everyone has good in them, but are they concerned enough to do something about anything that doesn't affect them is a different story.
Rob, I mean, you touched on the players trying to change the narrative and the perception and the message that they're ultimately trying to deliver and get across. And it's just the lack of connection from ownership and league front office to players is just embarrassingly large. The gap is just so large, and they're separated by such a distance, where you look at other leagues such as the NBA doing such a great job working together with its players, figuring out what the platforms that they want to speak on are. And, you know, Jerry Jones, his comments over the last couple weeks and what he's come out and said, and the rules that the league is trying to implement. How and when are the players in the office ever going to mend this relationship and get on the same page, so we don't have to continue to kind of report every other week just a new controversy or issue due to lack of communication between player and office?
Yeah, this is the toughest question to answer, because I don't know that there's a solution. I don't know that there could be a solution that would make both sides, all sides, everyone happy. The NFL and the owners are obviously going to be concerned about their bottom line. Whatever affects the ratings, the money, that's what it comes down to for the NFL. The players want to be they want the NFL to just look at the conversation and have an open mind, and not do things for, as some of the guys have said, for photo op, or do things because they want to put it out there for show. But they want sincerity. They want the league to be genuine and actually care about their causes. And I don't know that they feel that yet. I've talked to a lot of guys behind the scenes, a lot of guys who are associated with Colin and Eric Reed, because these are two guys who are still not in the league. They have the collusion cases out there against the NFL, and guys like Kenny Stills and others will tell you the NFL can't be serious about it if they continue to keep Eric Reed and Colin Kaepernick out of the NFL. They've taken two guys and blackballed them from the league who belong in if you go by talent alone, Colin Kaepernick belongs on an NFL roster. If Christian Hackenberg can get signed by the Eagles yesterday, you look around the league, Colin Kaepernick belongs on an NFL roster. You look at Eric Reed, a guy who may be a top 15 safety in the NFL, and he's still out of a job. And a couple of weeks ago, he had an opportunity to go to Nashville, to go to Tennessee and get a workout, and they had some weather issues with the flight. It was canceled. He couldn't get in there for 2 days, and before he could get in there, they went and signed Kenny Vaccaro, so who's another safety who's also a top 15, top 20 safety. But if these guys aren't going to be allowed back in the league or given an opportunity, I think there's a lot of players out there who look at it and go, well, how could the NFL be sincere or genuine about wanting to care about our causes?
I'd like to transition now, because I want to make sure we have some time to talk about it. But we had on Marcus Hayes a couple of weeks ago, and he did a column in the Daily News that was actually on the topic, that is the topic of your book. And in fact, when he talked to Josh and I, he mentioned that he wrote that column because of you and because of your new book, Birds of Prey. And I'd really like to have you tell us about the book, and then when you're done telling us about the book, some of the other work that you're doing on faithofthefieldshow.com.
Well, the book Birds of Prey came about because the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and I wanted to be able to tell their story as a guy who, one, grew up in the city, grew up an Eagles fan sitting in the 700 level, then gave up fandom when I became an AP writer and had to become an objective journalist and covered the team now for 19 years. But to be able to follow that team day in and day out over the past 19 years, and then last year, I wanted to be able to tell their story and tell it accurately. And I don't think you can write a book or tell a story about what helped the Philadelphia Eagles win the Super Bowl, what allowed them to overcome their adversity, so many challenges that they had to clear last season, and ultimately go on to win the Super Bowl, than to talk about the faith and the brotherhood. There's a group of Christian brothers on that team who are so strong in their faith. And we've seen guys, men of faith, come through the NFL and come through all sports on different levels. Guys like Russell Wilson have won a Super Bowl. Guys like Tim Tebow have come in and out of the league. But Kurt Warner won a Super Bowl. But this group of Eagles, they were different to me, and it was different than any locker room I'd ever seen, because they were not only strong in their faith, but they were bold in their faith. And in a time when people don't want to be politically incorrect, they were willing to use their platform to talk about their faith in any way, shape, or form, whether it's on social media, whether it's appearing on my show, Faith on the Field. No matter what it was, they were always willing to go out there and discuss their faith. And to hear a guy like Zach Ertz say, our number one priority isn't to win Super Bowls or win games, it's to make disciples. That puts things in perspective. That tells you what the guy who was a Pro Bowl tight end, the go-to weapon on the Eagles, the guy who caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, how he feels. Carson Wentz, how he feels. Same thing. Nick Foles, to go from being traded, released, thinking about quitting football, to coming back, a guy who's been humbled and now been lifted up. His faith is the reason why he was able to go out there in that Super Bowl game and play with such a sense of peace, because he understands his value and his worth doesn't come from his accomplishments. It comes from his relationship with the Lord. And that allowed him to go out there and have a phenomenal game in the biggest stage, and then to have the opportunity to glorify God. So I wanted to be able to tell their story and tell it right. And I had a lot of conversations with these guys over the past year, 2 years. And then when they won the Super Bowl, it was just a natural thing to do. It was the next step. So the book comes out next week. It's already available for pre-order on Amazon. The audio, I recorded the audio version of it a couple months ago. That's already available too, if you want to read it. If you want to hear it, Carson Wentz told me today he's going to start listening to it on his drive to practice. It might take him a couple days because it's a pretty extensive book. But that's how you can get it. That's how you can order it. And I'm looking forward to doing a little bit of a press tour next week as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that Carson Wentz wrote the foreword to this book. That's correct?
Yes, Carson wrote the foreword to the book.
Wow.
And he Carson Wentz and I have a really good relationship. He's been on Faith on the Field show. He's done events with me a couple times. Doug Peterson and I just did an event with him for the American Bible Society in June, where I had an opportunity to interview him on stage in front of about 1,100 people. And we just used clips from that interview with Doug Peterson, who many people don't know how devout he is in his faith. And he shared that in about a 35, 40-minute interview. And we used clips of that for episode 1 of our season 2 of Faith on the Field that people could download and listen to on iTunes. Just go to Faith on the Field show and you'll find it.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know him. For me personally, I'm a college professor, and I took my class to see your episode back in September where you had Carson Wentz, Trey Burton, and Stefan Wisniewski. And really quickly before we go, one thing I observed sitting there watching the show live was that seemed like that Eagles team had a unity I'd never seen before. So when did you think that team and that unity they built was good enough to win the Super Bowl?
That in that event you're talking about was 4 days before the season opener. For those guys to come out there 4 days before the season opener, unpaid appearance, and take time, 5 hours between the driving and the back and forth and everything else to do that, I was like, this is a special group of guys who are willing to do this. It was pretty early on in the season when I started to sense that they were going to have a special season. When they're baptizing Marcus Johnson before the game in Carolina, I'm like, this is a special group of men, and I feel that God has anointed them to do special things.
Fantastic. And you can check out the radio show on faithonthefieldshow.com. And again, the book is called Birds of Prey, available in all forms by next week. Some versions available now on Amazon. And Rob, thank you so much for sharing this time with us. And I'm looking forward to reading your book.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Have a great day.